Hello and welcome. My name is Brian Chu. I'm a Microsoft technical trainer. I'm here to walk you through the AZ-800 Administering Windows Server Hybrid Core Infrastructure course. Let's get started. In this session, you'll learn the reasons for configuring Azure to support workloads that require Active Directory, and how to extend your local ADDS into the cloud. By the end, you'll be able to select the right integration model, plan and prepare for directory synchronization, implement seamless single sign-on, and manage Windows Server in hybrid topology. First, let's learn how to implement hybrid identity in Windows Server. Microsoft Entra ID is a cloud-based directory service, part of Microsoft's Platform as a Service offerings. It's designed for cloud-native and hybrid identity scenarios, allowing you to manage users, groups, and devices using open cloud protocols. Entra ID is highly scalable and available, so you don't need to worry about maintaining infrastructure or disaster recovery. It also offers features not found in ADDS, like multi-factor authentication, identity protection, and self-service password reset. Microsoft Entra ID is a multi-tenant by design, ensuring isolation between directory instances. Each Entra tenant is a secure boundary and container for users, groups, and applications. You can create multiple tenants for testing or different business needs, and associate them with Azure subscriptions. Unlike ADDS, Entra ID doesn't use Kerberos or LDAP, but instead relies on OAuth, OpenID, and the REST APIs. There are no organizational units or group policy objects. Instead, you use conditional access and federation. Microsoft Entra ID offers several integration options for connecting ADDS with Azure. Extend on-prem ADDS to Azure by hosting domain controllers in Azure virtual machines. Synchronize on-prem ADDS with Entra ID. Use password hash synchronization, PHS for short, to allow users to sign in with the same password for cloud and local resources. Implement SSO between on-prem ADDS and Entra ID using federation services such as ADFS or path-through authentication. So let's take a closer look at each of these options. Password hash synchronization is a popular hybrid identity solution. It securely synchronizes password hashes from your on-prem ADDS to Entra ID, allowing users to use the same password for both cloud and local resources. This approach simplifies authentication, improves user experience. Path-through authentication validates user passwords against your on-prem ADDS when signing into cloud services. An authentication agent installed on domain controller server securely handles password validation requests. This method ensures that passwords are never stored in the cloud, and supports redundancy by allowing multiple agents for high availability. Federation uses Active Directory Federation Service, ADFS, to authenticate users via your on-prem ADDS before granting access to Azure resources. This approach supports advanced scenarios such as smart card authentication and custom security policies. Federation proxies and servers handle authentication requests, providing flexibility for organizations with complex requirements. Choosing the right authentication method depends on your organization's needs. The decision tree helps you determine whether to use cloud authentication, path-through authentication, password hash sync, or federation. Consider factors like enforcing security policies, supporting disaster recovery, and integrating with existing providers. Some features like smart card signing or multi-set authentication require specific methods. Microsoft Entra Identity Protection relies on password hash sync for reporting leaked credentials and failover scenarios. Directory synchronization connects your on-prem ADDS with Entra ID, enabling users, groups, and contacts to be replicated to the cloud. The synchronization flow is typically one-way, from ADDS to Azure. Microsoft Entra Connect simplifies connectivity between your on-prem ADDS and Azure. It helps you choose your topology and requirements, then deploys and configures all necessary components. When you run Entra Connect, new users, groups, and contacts are added to Entra ID, and changes made on-prem are synchronized. It's important to understand the source of authority for each object as management remains on-prem. Installing and configuring Entra Connect requires specific accounts. An Azure account with hybrid identity administrator permission, an on-prem account with enterprise administrator permissions. Entra Connect Cloud Sync is a lightweight alternative to the full Entra Connect application. It uses provisioning agents for easier setup and high availability. And it supports multi-forest environments, mergers, and acquisitions. It can be used alongside Entra Connect for flexible hybrid entity solutions. All configuration is managed in the cloud, and agents act as bridges between AD and Entra ID. Before synchronizing, perform thorough pre-deployment checks, such as analyzing for invalid characters in ADDS objects attributes and incorrect user principal names (UPNs). You will see the details in our lab at the end of this session. Use health check tools to ensure your ADDS is ready for synchronization. The ID Fix tool helps identify and fix common errors, such as duplicated or malformed proxy addresses and UPNs. AD-modified.NET and PowerShell can be used to bulk edits to attributes across OUs or domains. To deploy directory synchronization, you need a domain-joined computer to host the Entra Connect service. The main steps are: add your ADDS domain to Azure, verify it, and set it as the primary domain. download, and install Microsoft Entra Connect. This setup enables secure, reliable synchronization between your local ID and Entra ID. Run the Entra Connect configuration wizard to set up synchronization. You can choose express settings for single forest environments with a built-in database. This is recommended for most scenarios. Or advanced settings for multiple forests or custom databases. It is used in more complex environments. The wizard guides you through configuration, ensuring all necessary components are deployed. Then you can enable optional features. After running Entra Connect, validate synchronization results to ensure everything is working correctly. You can configure synchronization to include all domains and OUs, or select specific ones. Custom installation options allow you to choose matching attributes for user identities. Seamless SSO allows users to access cloud resources without re-entering their passwords. Supported scenarios include web applications, Office apps, and Outlook. Some legacy scenarios, like older Office clients, are not supported. Path-through authentication uses an authentication agent installed by Entra Connect. The agent registers with your Entra ID tenant and securely handles password validation requests. Authentication requests are managed via Azure Service Bus, with no inbound traffic required. This setup simplifies management, ensuring users can access resources seamlessly. Microsoft Entra Domain Services provides domain services like group policy management, domain joining, and Kerberos authentications to your Entra tenant. These services are fully compatible with on-prem ADDS, so you don't need to deploy or manage additional domain controllers in the cloud. Entra Domain Services supports scenarios such as secure administration of Azure Virtual Machine using a single set of credentials, legacy applications using LDAP bind or read authentication, multi-tier service or daemon applications that require authenticated calls. Considerations include the inability to modify the LDAP directory, lack of schema extensions, and support only for user password authentication, no certificates or smart cards. To implement Entra Domain Services, you need a Microsoft Entra tenant on an Entra ID subscription, password hash synchronization deployed with Entra Connect, a routable DNS domain name for the service. Connect domain services to a virtual network, configure DNS, and enable other VMs and applications to use the managed domain. Password hashes must be stored in a format suitable for NTLM and Kerberos authentication. Cloud-only users must change their passwords before using domain services. Administrators can configure built-in GPOs for AADDC computers and users' containers, administrator DNS, and create custom OUs, gain administrative access to computers joined to the managed domain. However, some managed tasks differ from regular on-prem ADDS environments. You cannot extend the schema, connect to domain controllers via remote desktop, add domain controllers, or use domain enterprise administrator privileges. To authenticate users, domain services needs password hashes in the correct format. Synchronized credential information can't be reused if you recreate the managed domain. Cloud-only users must change their passwords before using domain services, so plan carefully before making any changes. Next, you'll learn how to implement directory and identity services, deploy and configure domain controllers, install replicas, and set up new forests. These skills are essential for supporting modern cloud-based workloads. Deploying a domain controller in Azure is similar to on-prem, but you must place the AD database on the Azure Virtual Machine's data disk. Options include deploying only in Azure or in both on-prem and Azure environments. Consider scenarios like resiliency, latency, and extending access to worldwide sites. Static IP addresses are recommended for the domain controllers, and greenfield deployments are common for new environments. Key deployment considerations include configuring VM network interfaces with the static, private IPs for DNS support, ensuring inter-site connectivity between on-prem and Azure, setting up Active Directory sites to control replication traffic, establishing trust relationship, which can be one-way or two-way, using read-only domain controllers to reduce egress traffic, configuring FISMO roles and global catalog placement for reliability, provisioning at least 2 domain controllers per domain for availability, backing up and restoring domain controllers using standard procedures, managing and monitoring resources to quickly address issues. Now, it's time to get practical experience from Lab 2. In this lab, you'll step into the shoes of an IT administrator at Contoso who's been asked to solve a common challenge: how to unify user management and authentication across both on-prem and cloud environments. You'll walk through a realistic scenario where your organization wants to simplify accounts management, strengthen security, and give users a seamless signing experience, no matter where they are working. In this lab, we will implement integration between ADDS and Microsoft Entra ID. First, we need to create a new tenant in the Entra ID. We have already logged on to the Azure portal And as we can see, a new tenant called Contoso Organization was already created. So the very first step for us is to set up a custom domain name for this newly created tenant. So here, we will click the Add Custom Domain Name here. All right, so we will not use the default domain name during the synchronization. So we will type in contoso.home here and click Add Domain. In a production environment, you need to verify this domain. But in our lab environment, we will just skip this step. So let's switch back to the custom domain name. So as you can see here, for this domain, it is unverified. But that is good enough for our demonstration. Next, let's create a new user. So we will click New User, and we will create a new user for this Entra ID. So we will call this a new user admin. And we need to copy the domain suffix so that we can then log on with this new user. And we set up a display name for this admin account. And we will create a new password for this administrator. Next, let's click Properties. All right, and then Assignment. For the demonstration purpose, we will assign the global administrator role for this Entra ID account. But in production environment, you need to use the least privileged access model to do the role assignment. So let's click Review and Create. Let's refresh the page, and you can see the admin account is successfully created. So let's first copy the name, and we launch a notepad and pasted the Entra ID account name here. All right. So as I mentioned earlier, we need to log on to the Azure portal again with the newly created global administrator. And we type in the default password. Click Sign In. So here we need to update the password. We type in the existing password. And then we set up a new password. And this time, let's confirm the password. Click Sign In. Okay, we have successfully logged in with the newly created global administrator account. For the next step, we switch our gear to the preparation for the on-prem ADDS. Visit the GitHub ID Fix tool. So let's scroll down a little bit on this page. And we will use this directory synchronization error remediation tool. So this one will help us to fix any issues for the synchronization. All right, so let's get this application installed first. Right? Let's click OK. So let's click Query. Let's click Yes. So as we can see, this lists the current on-prem ADDS. And as you can see, there is an error. So we need to use this tool to fix the error before we set up the synchronization. So we choose an action from the drop-down list. And then we need to apply the action. And then we click Yes. As you can see, it is complete. All right, so after we fix the issue, we can move on to our next step. This time we switch back to the Azure portal, and we will download and install Microsoft Entra Connect. Select Entra, and then scroll down a little bit, and we click Microsoft Entra Connect. So here we will select Connect Sync. And then we will download the agent. And click Download Connect Sync Agent. We accept terms and download. After the download is complete, we will run the application to start the configuration of the synchronization. All right, so let's open the application. Let's click Continue. This time we will just use the Express settings. And here we need to provide two kinds of credentials. The very first one is our global administrator. So this credential will be used to connect to the Entra ID. Click Next. And then we need to do the verification for this Entra ID account. And we enter the very secure password. Next step is to connect to the local domain. So we will use the local administrator password. So that user will be Contoso administrator. And we type in the password for the administrator. And click Next. So as we can see here, the custom domain name is listed as not verified. So as I mentioned earlier, you should fix this error before you do the synchronization in production environment. But for our demonstration, we will just keep it as it is. Let's click Next. All right, so it's time for us to do the installation, and after that, it will automatically start the synchronization progress. All right, So as you can see, the completion of the installation is shown here. So we can switch back to the Azure portal. And then let's take a look at the users blade. So here, if you can do a filter on the on-prem sync-enabled attributes, you can see that the domain users have already been synced into the Entra ID. All right, and next let's switch back to the on-prem domain. And then let's launch Active Directory users and computers. So what we will do next is we will do some update for the domain user. So we click the Sales OU. And then we will take a look at new user creation progress. So for this one, we will name the new domain user Jordan Michelle. We add the domain user name and type in the password. All right, and then we create the new local domain user. So we will use this domain user to test the synchronization from local Active Directory to Entra ID. We can wait for the next synchronization period, but here we can use a PowerShell command to start the synchronization. So the command that we will be using is start AD sync cycle. All right, so we have already kicked off the synchronization. So for the very next step, we will switch to the Entra ID to verify that the newly created local domain user is successfully synchronized to the cloud. So here we click the refresh button, and we can actually search the domain user's name. And you can see the synchronization is successful. So for the next step, we will enable password writeback in Microsoft Entra ID. So we will launch the Microsoft Entra Connect Sync again. At this time, we do a configuration. There are multiple tasks that we can do, but here we will focus on setting up the password writeback. So we will select the Customize Synchronization options, and then click Next. So we will first connect to the Microsoft Entra ID. You will be prompted with the authentication again. So here we'll just use the global administrator of the Entra ID tenant. And then we click Next. So here we click Next again. And this time, let's enable password writeback. For the Entra ID users, they can easily update or reset their password without doing the VPN to their local Active Directory domain service. All right, configuration is done. Next up, we will enable password authentication in Microsoft Entra Connect. So let's launch Microsoft Entra Connect Sync again. And we also do some additional tasks here. So here we will choose Change User Sign-in. And authenticated against the Entra ID tenant again. Let's click Sign In. And this time, we will switch to password authentication from our default password hash sync. So this is the default settings that was set up in the Express settings. But this time, we will switch to password authentications. And here, as you can see, we also enable single sign-on. So let's click Next. And here, you also need to connect to your local Active Directory. So this time, we will use the Control Administrator for the authentication. All right, so now we can start the configuration. All right, the configuration is complete. So this time we will switch back to the Azure portal. So we will click Microsoft Entra Connect, and then we click Connect Sync. Let's click the refresh button. All right. Let's do the initialization of the synchronization again from a PowerShell command. All right. And this time, as we can see, the password authentication is already set up. This concludes our session. You've learned how to connect your on-prem identity infrastructure with Azure, implement hybrid identity, and manage domain services in the cloud. There are many ways to continue your learning journey. We encourage you to watch other videos in this course or search out your next favorite topic on Microsoft Learn at aka.ms/learn.